Control the language, shape the mind. Dictate the culture, keep the masses blind. The party's hand, it moves unseen, altering words, reshaping the scene. They twist the truth, they bend the light, crafting their narrative out of sight. Every term they redefine to serve their purpose, to toe their line. Everything means capitalism. In their parallel tongue, it's their prism, whispered in socialist code. The truth obscured, the meanings erode. From bourgeoisie to equities, in their language weaves a twisted game. Each word a tool, each phrase a ploy to cloak the truth in their employ. Bourgeoisie oppressors they claim, equities their utopia's name. Whiteness, racism, systemic fly, all roads lead back to their abolition fight. Fascism dubbed as free market stream, abolishing individual liberties, their scheme. Normativity, patriarchy's grip, all intertwined, their narrative flip. Everything means capitalism. In their parallel tongue, it's their prism, whispered in socialist code. The truth obscured, the meanings erode. From bourgeoisie to equities, in their language weaves a twisted game. Each word a tool, each phrase a ploy to cloak the truth in their employ. Queer and trans, they declare the war on capitalism's norm they're restore. Gender binary, the nuclear family's whole. Their destruction is the goal. Imperialism, colonization's reign. Decolonization to break the chain. The police, enforcers, their name. Guardians of capital, their claim. Their language shapes, their rhetoric binds, to break the cycle, to free our minds. For in their words, their hidden game, capitalism's grip, they aim to tame. Everything means capitalism. In their parallel tongue, it's their prism, whispered in socialist code. The truth obscured, the meanings erode. From bourgeoisie to equities, in their language weaves a twisted game. Each word a tool, each phrase a ploy to cloak the truth in their employ. Control the language, control the crowd, but in our hearts the truth is loud. Their words may twist, their meanings bend, but in the end our voices ascend.
Hello, fellow Gnostic sex cultists. Happy, it's Wednesday. It's Wednesday, isn't it? It's not Thursday. Good thing it's not Thursday, because if it was Thursday, that would mean I would be on a 6 a.m. flight out to AFPAC on Friday, and I'm just not prepared for that just yet. But we do have, I see we have a Groiper friend in the chat. Hello, Taylor. I think you're new here. Taylor says, W white people, W bourgeoisie, W fascism. I mean, okay, I can, okay, fine. And then he says, W God, W straight people. Again, like, I don't care if people are gay, but okay. Now, where I will say W colonization, yeah. And Taylor, guess what, bro? L police, yeah, I agree with you on that too. L police, but not for the same reason. Not for the same reason that the left hates the police. We can dislike the police for a completely different reason, and that's cool, man. That's cool. All right, guys. Well, we have got another day of World Communism School in front of us, but like, it's a really busy week. I just want to lay out everything that's going on. I have no idea, Eric. That's a very good question. I have no idea. I have no idea who's going to AFPAC. I don't know, except for like the people that they've announced. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about that later. So let's talk about what we're doing today and get some orders of business out of the way because we do have a full day. We are doing another session in the World Founding Conference of the Revolutionary Communist International, the World School of Communism 2024. This is actually going on right now in Italy. And Taylor, while I agree with you that capitalism is not necessarily the pinnacle of everything, what you need to understand, bro, is how they define capitalism as private property ownership. It's not how you define capitalism. So we're talking about two different things. And so what I do believe is that even though capitalism itself could probably go for some improvements, and I think we can have conversations about that, what I absolutely do not want is for these people to control our reality. And so, like, I have to deal with their definition of capitalism for the moment. Because here's the thing, Taylor, and this is just in case anyone else new is watching. What these people believe is that parental rights are a form of private property that they want to abolish. And so as long as that is on the table, and it is literally on the table right now, I think we need to deal with this problem. So while I'm on your side in theory, sometimes we got to deal with reality. Anyway, we are doing another session out of the World School of Communism. They're actually streaming this live on their YouTube channel. Now they're streaming it from Italy, so it happened this morning. And you can see they've got a whole bunch of sessions upcoming, but we are going to be streaming, I think, the one that I would like. Yes, exactly. See, the Groypers are smart, man. So true. They get to frame the argument in the language because they own academia. Groypers are smart. Listen, Groypers might be a pain in the ass. I think we can all like it. And I say that with love. The Groypers might be a pain in the ass, but they're smart, and so they're picking up on stuff. I just thought you were just a pretty face. I had no idea you knew so much. Oh, thank you, Taylor. Oh my gosh. See, all the Groypers, they're all going to fall in love with me. They don't know it yet, and we're not going to tell them how old I am. Obviously, I'm 29, but we're not going to tell them how old I am because they're all going to fall in love with me at AFPAC, and it's going to be great. Listen, there's like 3 women going to AFPAC. It's me, Isabella Moody, and Morgan Ariel, and they dislike Morgan Ariel right now because, quite frankly, Morgan Ariel's being kind of a bitch. And I tried to tell her, man, I tried to talk her down. I know we're going off topic from communism. I tried to tell Morgan Ariel, I was like, this is not the right way to play this. And she didn't listen. So whatever. And so, yeah, exactly. I am the only girl the Groypers like. Oh, no, is she going? I don't like her, though. I blocked her on Twitter. Anyway, we'll talk about that another time. We're going to talk about this for a minute. So what I want to watch today is this morning there was a session called How the Communist International Was Built. And that's my preference for the one that we watched today. Now we could go back and if people have strong feelings about this, let me know in the chat. We could go back and watch this What is Capitalism session. We could watch What is Imperialism session. Now, ironically, capitalism and imperialism basically mean the same thing. Ugh. I don't know. Maybe her and I will make up at AFPAC. I mean, stranger things have happened. I don't even remember why I blocked her. I just remember her being kind of like, well, a bitch. And so I think I just blocked her because I didn't want to deal with it. But maybe we'll make it. Listen, man, I've recently I wouldn't say I've mended fences with Brittany and Mio, but I think Brittany and Mio and I have come to some sort of cautious truce for the moment. I've unblocked Brittany and Mio. No one's giving anyone shit. So I guess we'll see. When you take a pause, I'm curious what you think about Has inferred because he's a communist. Yeah, MAGA communism isn't a real thing. Has is full of shit. Jackson Hinkle's full of shit as well. They're both just making stuff up. Don't pay attention to them. They don't know what they're talking. Well, no, actually, it's really smart. They do know what they're talking about, and they're trying to trick the conservative right into getting on board with communism. MAGA communism isn't real, though. Like, communism is just communism is just communism. Has wants to get rid of all private property. He wants to get rid of all intellectual property. Under Has Naz's and Jackson Hinkle's worldview, people would not be able to buy a home. They would not be able to buy land. They would not be able to own an apartment rental that they rent out. They wouldn't be able to own a private business. There would be no intellectual property. There would be no parental rights, and there would be no individual liberties. So I don't care if Has puts MAGA in front of it. It's still like communism is communism is communism. All right, so we're going to watch that session today. I have a couple other things I want to talk about first. First off, please make sure you are subscribed to my Substack, Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com. And I'm going to be putting up part 3 of the Inner Circle podcast for the Gender Accelerationist Manifesto later on tonight. I apologize I didn't get to it last night because what I was doing last night on my Speak Socialist Substack is I was writing the latest piece for that. This is my book that I'm writing using Substack, so you guys can follow along with the book in real time. And yes, there might be typos, Judy. I know there are typos. Okay, I'll go back and fix them later. But last night I put up a post called Individualism is Dead. I'm writing this book like a dystopian fiction, looking basically back on the fall of the United States, but everything in it is real and is happening right now. And so one of the things that the left does like to attack is individualism, because of course individualism upholds capitalism. You cannot have capitalism without individualism. If individualism falls, capitalism falls, and we all descend into a Marxist utopia based on equity in which everything is free but everyone is equally poor and people probably don't have enough food and stuff like that, and the community owns the children and all those things. And so that's kind of like what this is about. Now, when I post on my Speak Socialist Substack, I also do an audio version of it. And I decided to post last night's Across post with the Inner Circle podcast, just because I think it's good and I want some feedback on it. So you can hear that now. That is a supporter-only podcast over on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. Sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. You get access to that, as well as a whole bunch of other perks, to include 2 Zoom calls with me every single week, to include access to my supporter Discord. We do movie night every Sunday night at 8 p.m. This Sunday, we are watching The Abyss. So we're doing Blockbuster Movie Month with some old blockbusters. And Bot really wanted to watch The Abyss. And so fine, I won't watch it because I'm going to be on an airplane back from AFPAC. But you guys will watch it and you'll love it. And Jennifer is going to do trivia and music and stuff like that. So that's what's going to be coming up in the supporter Discord on Sunday. And then, of course, if you want to support the work, another way you can do it is by heading over to my merch store, unwokeart.com, where I have 2 limited edition things right now. Of course, we have the awesome June limited edition Plague Doctor t-shirt. I'm doing a different Plague Doctor every single month. This one was like neon lino cut, and it looks really sweet. This is to support my Unwoke Wiki project, where we are trying to put together all the primary source documentation of the socialist takeover of America, and you can help support that. This comes in black and it also comes in purple. Look at that purple. Looks pretty cool. I love this stuff. I love the Plague Doctor mascot. It's the best. But of course, what we really want to talk about is this one. We have, in honor of Trump becoming a convicted felon for less than a week. You can only get this shirt through Sunday, because then I'm taking it out of the store. This is a limited edition shirt of the classic Trump orange steel mugshot, an American gangster on it. And this comes in a variety of colors. You've got the black one, but I personally think the orange one looks pretty rad, to be honest. And you know who else thinks it looks rad is Vince. Vince wanted like Vince, thank you for buying so much of my merch and wearing it and sporting it in the real world. Look at that shirt. Come on. The orange is awesome, but guess what? Vince thought this shirt was so amazing that he bought it in black as well. So you can see right there, that's how the shirt looks in the real world. I think I'm partial to the orange myself. I think it looks cool. But not to be outdone by the shirt, we've also got the classic, the limited edition, the Trump golden mug. Now, the first Trump golden mug I did is one of the most best-selling things that I've ever offered in my store before. So I had to bring it back for a limited edition. And you can see, and I know the lettering is backwards, because sometimes that just happens in photos, but you can see the badass Trump golden mug. Even the lettering is in gold on the golden mug. I have never had such positive reviews than for the Trump golden mugs before. So that all this stuff is available for the American Gangster design for less than a week. That's available through Sunday. I'll be taking it out of the store then. And so make sure you head over to unwokeart.com, pick up some merch. You can also get some other cool merch while you're there. And all that does go to fund the work I'm doing, and I do really appreciate it. All right, another couple other orders of business. This is not my last stream of the day. This is but my first stream of the day. And after we do this, I'm going to go take a little break. And then at 9 p.m. tonight, allegedly, Big Tech is joining us back for our watch party. We are watching The Century of the Self. This is part 3. So we've been doing this the last couple weeks, and we're now on part 3 of The Century of the Self. And so he and or his shadow self is going to join us at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight for the third part of this watch party. So that's going to be really great. Don't give me any grief about this. I'm not choosing between him and Nick, all right? I'm not doing it. Don't do it. I can like both Big Tech and Nick. Yeah. Anyway, so that's going on at 9 p.m. tonight. And then tomorrow we are having Mike Termott on at 5 p.m. And he is the vice presidential nominee for the Libertarian Party. And we're going to talk to him about queer and trans and all this stuff. And I think we're going to have a nice little chat. And I'm looking forward to getting to know him a little bit more. I'm looking forward to you guys getting to know him a little bit more. And so that is going to be at 5 p.m. tomorrow. And then on Friday, I don't know if I'm streaming yet because it really all depends on how the internet is at the hotel in Detroit, because I should be in Detroit on Friday around streaming time. So we're gonna have to see. I'm not making any promises, but I may stream on Friday, I may not. It just depends, all right. Sometimes we have to let these things work themselves out. Anyway, those are all my preambles and introductions. So now we are going to jump into watching our World Communist School thing. And I need everyone to mount the like button for me. If you would be so kind, mounting the like button lets YouTube know to recommend my content. If you don't feel like mounting the like button, you can do whatever you want to the like button. Just no smashing. We're not hooligans here. We're adults. So let us know what you're doing to the like button. You can high five the like button. You can give the like button a kiss on the cheek. You can put your arm around the like button. You can slap the like button's ass. You can do whatever dirty things you want to do to the like button. The like button consents to all of it. Let us know what you're doing in the chat. Our Groiper friend is demolishing the like button. I mean, that could be read any number of ways, my friend, but I do appreciate the feisty energy. Bot, per usual. Bot, you really listen. I know you like pegging the like button, but like, can you switch it up every now and again? Maybe just like give the like button a break. Like, you know, it's just, oh, there it is. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. Oh, look at this. A nice romantic ballad for the like button. I like that. All right. Also, guys, please do make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And I want to jump into this presentation, how the Communist International was built. Now, for people who are new and who didn't see yesterday's presentation, that's cool. So the reason that we're watching this is that there is a new-ish, it's been around for a couple months now, a new-ish political party in the United States called the Revolutionary Communists of America. The Revolutionary Communists of America are actual communists. These are far leftists. They are highly organized. On Twitter, you'll see these stickers that people post all the time of Karl Marx pointing at you, and it says, "Are you a communist?" and it has a QR code. That's these people. These people are organized in 30 U.S. cities. These people actively helped to swing the 100,000 votes against Biden in the Michigan Democratic Convention. They are recruiting actively. They have doubled in size since last year. This is something that is actually going to be a problem. They do these Marxist schools all over the country where they get together with people for a weekend to recruit them to their party. They teach them how they're going to use unions. They own the unions. Like, this organization runs a lot of the unions. They use workplaces, unions, to recruit people to their party, and they're actively talking about overthrowing the United States government and raising the red flag of communism above the White House. Yes, we have that on video. And so the reason that we're paying attention to these people is I actually think these people are going to be a problem. I'm not suggesting they're going to be a problem right this second, but they are some of the more focused activists that are out there today. This and the Communist International, what they're going to talk about, this is an organization that used to be called the International Marxist Tendency. This is an organization that was started in 1992. So it's been around a long time. They're just changing the name of it and they're just rebranding it because now they've decided to go full on effing commie because they think that the public, I mean, not just in the United States, they've got organizations in Canada, United Kingdom, Sweden, Switzerland. They are forming these organizations all over, and they're having this big meeting in Italy where all of the international organizations are coming together to agree upon their terms of operation, essentially, and to communicate with each other and to teach each other and do that stuff. Now, I think these people are going to be a problem. And I think that these people may not be a problem right this second, but I think give them 5 years and we are going to be seeing and hearing from a lot more of these people. These people are not funded by George Soros in any way. These people are entirely self-funded. This organization, again, has been around since 1992. It is part of their charter that they are going to be self-funded because you got to understand these people see being a communist as part of their identity. It's part of who they're, it's part of their innate being. And so they believe that by taking outside funding from like George Soros and stuff like that, what that means is they are going to have to give up who they are in order to please the master. And they don't want to do that. They think it would not allow them to have a politically pure movement. They are funded almost entirely by donations, by dues that they have their members pay. They have their members pay 1 or 2 days of their wages every single month to the organization. We're talking about like hundreds of dollars here. These are workers. Okay, like communists are they're workers, they're working class, they're like blue collar, and so they're paying 1 or 2 days of wages to this organization every single month for the privilege of being called a communist. And again, they've doubled in size since August. They make money on event sales where they hold these events all over the country and they charge ticket sales for that. They also make event money on publishing. These people don't make as much money on publishing as some of the other groups out there, but they do charge for that as well. I'm surprised how the RevComs seem to have a lot more support in people at their marches and conferences. So it's important to understand these are not the RevComs. The RevComs, listen, and this gets confusing, okay? Because there are a lot of these communist groups all over the place. The RevComs are a very specific group, and it's not these people. The RevComs are more like, and I've looked into the RevComs, like the RevComs are more like a radio show and they're trying to do some stuff and like they're doing meetings and stuff like that. But like, I'm not intimidated by the RevComs, if I'm honest about it. So you have the RevComs are a different group. The Communist Party USA is a different group. The Communist Party USA is not even really doing anything of interest. And this group was specifically formed in response to the Democratic Socialists of America not being communist enough. So that's what we're working with, guys. Taylor says communists are more based than liberals. Well, communists hate liberals for precisely that reason. So I think that they would agree with you on that. All right, let's see. Let's see what the description of this is. Hang on, let me make this bigger because I decided not to wear my glasses today for some reason. The Communist International was founded by Lenin and Trotsky as a tool of world revolution, bringing together communist parties across the globe. It was a way to sharpen the theoretical and practical abilities of communists internationally. This talk will trace the origins and early years of the Communist International, showing the need for us to build a similar organization in the world today. This is why I wanted to watch this presentation, because this group, these are Bolsheviks. These are not queer Marxists. You're not going to see any pink hair. You're not going to see any trans people. These are old school Bolsheviks. These people idolize Lenin and Trotsky. These people think the Russian Revolution was like the greatest thing to ever happen. And the reason I wanted to watch this presentation is they are trying to mirror what Lenin did in the Russian Revolution. They're trying to do the exact same thing. And so if we learn about their perspective on what Lenin and Trotsky did, then that's going to teach us what they're going to try to do today. The parties that made up the Communist International had varied origins, with some growing from small propaganda organizations and others being split from major reformist parties. If we are to create a new mass revolutionary communist party, we should study how they were formed in the past. And if they're going to study how they were formed in the past, then we're going to study them. And that's the way it's going to go. All right. To warn everyone, the way the presentation went yesterday is they had interpreters going like as they were talking. So basically the person said a couple lines and then they allowed the interpreter to interpret. It's a little bit slower. I know some people don't like it, but you do get used to it. And so it just is what it is. This is what we have to work with. And this was presented earlier today, and we're going to see what they had to say. So let's get this party started.
We still defend today were developed and were built upon and elaborated further during those congresses. Now, we are launching the revolutionary communist.
I apologize. I forgot the super chats. Thank you, Naruto. Thank you. I apologize. Carlin, is Macron dissolving a part of parliament as a big part of a deal as I think it is? His party lost and he sent all people back to voting. I mean, basically what's happening in France is in France and actually in Germany as well, isn't it? They're being taken over by like the right wing is winning. Like by some miracle. The right is the hardline right is actually winning. So I think this is actually a good thing. Like knock on wood. So that's my perception of what's happening. If someone else knows more than me, let me know, because I haven't really been paying attention to it. But that is just my general perception. And Adrian said, did you get a chance to listen to the Be Less White song I created and put in the Discord? No, Adrian, I haven't, but thank you for the reminder. And I promise, I will. And thank you for the super chat.
International. It is not a mass international like the Comintern, but we aim to make it that. Now that is going to involve a lot of work, a lot of turns, a lot of tactical questions will be posed over the coming years. And we need to have an organization which is educated in the history of the movement, with cadres who understand that, and that are capable of turning in a flexible manner when necessary. I think we've done a reasonably good job at this present turn. But the reason why it has been so smooth is because it corresponds to the needs of the moment. When something corresponds to the needs of the moment, it's much easier to carry out. But you also need a certain level of education in the organization. Now, the question is this: how is a mass revolutionary communist international going to be built? It's going to be events that create the mass international.
Events. What does he mean
Ted
by
Grant
that?
always used to say, events, events, events. Without the big events in history, you cannot transform a small revolutionary organization into a mass force. For the consciousness of the masses to reach revolutionary conclusions require events which open the eyes of the masses.
I haven't been knitting in a while.
For example, the nature of the state. We're educated in school that the state is like an arbiter, a referee that just controls that everybody behaves properly. If any of you have seen the videos of interviews with the miners' wives and the ex-miners who were part of the miners' strike in 1984, you will see how they were forced to draw conclusions about the nature of the police. Ordinary working class men and women defending their jobs were repeatedly brutally beaten. That changed the consciousness. It created, for a period, what was an insurrectionary mood.
Hang on. Okay, I know this is unrelated, but I did hear about this. And I meant to bring this up on my community call earlier and I forgot. So guys, Ben Thorpe got arrested again last night. Does everyone else know this? So Ben Thorpe, for people who don't know, Ben Thorpe threatened to come to my house several months ago because he doesn't live that far away from me. And in response to Ben Thorpe continuing to threaten to come to my house and quite frankly threatening to do me harm, I got a restraining order on his ass and I don't feel bad about that. And then like a month later, he kicked his daughter on a live stream and got arrested. So Ben Thorpe has been behaving like a fucking moron ever since he got arrested for kicking his daughter on a live stream. And basically, he pretended it wasn't a real legal process. He pretended he didn't have to worry about it. And then he ended up pissing off the judge. And so the judge gave him a year-long no contact order with his daughter, which the daughter was not happy about either. He's already violated the no contact order once. And last night, on a live stream, and Grace streamed all of this because of course she did, Ben Thorpe got arrested again and he was hiding in the RV and Grace was pretending she didn't know where he was and they called out the dogs on this guy and they called out drones and there were like 5 cop cars all to find Ben Thorpe when he was hiding in the bathroom in his RV. And I'm sorry, I don't feel bad for Ben Thorpe. Ben Thorpe has entirely created this situation for himself by, first off, kicking his daughter on a live stream. Secondly, continuing to piss off the judge and not take this seriously. Thirdly, violating the no contact order once already, and then he already had to go to jail for this once, and now he's going back to jail. And I don't feel bad for Ben, and I don't feel bad for Grace. They thought they were smarter than everyone, and now Ben's probably going to go to jail for like a while for this one. This is like the second violation of the no contact order that the judge has put on this guy. And so you know what the judge is probably going to do now? The judge is going to be like, bro, I told you no contact for 1 year, and now I'm going to put you in prison and make sure you have no contact for 1 year. It's just like, anyway, Grace streamed the whole thing and you guys can check that out. But yes, Ben Thorpe got arrested again and I don't feel bad for them at all. You get what you get. Fuck around and find out. Do they have the why do they have the Groyper curse? I didn't realize that.
It's those kind of events that have an impact on consciousness. More recently, we've seen it in the United States and Canada.
All my yarn is tangled up.
The brutal clampdown of some of the encampments. To many of the students who experienced that for the first time, it would have been a revelation.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Hey, I'm going to turn my mic down a little bit. I think I'm too loud.
Now, this is just the beginning. This is nothing compared to what will come.
True.
Other events that have an impact are things like major strikes, general strikes, sometimes factory occupations when the workers have no other way of defending themselves, wars, major economic crises. All of these have an impact on consciousness. It's when such big events unfold.
So what he's talking about, do you guys know how, like, I've been trying to explain that the college protests are not really about, like, they don't think, like, if they get concessions from the university, fine. If they get divestment and things, like, that would be great. But the college protests are not about anything other than making a large political statement, making an iconic statement that will live beyond them. They're trying to recreate, like, the anti-war protests of, like, 1968. They're trying to recreate the anti-war, like, Vietnam protests, except they're doing it based on, like, being anti the war in the Israeli genocide in Gaza. And so they're trying to create iconic cultural moments. So people on the right are so short-sighted about this because they think, like, oh, the students are going to get arrested. The students aren't going to graduate. Ha 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 ha. And they make fun of them for it. But what they don't realize is the students don't care if they don't graduate. The students don't care if they get arrested, because the goal is to create iconic moments that are going to inspire other people. And that's what he's talking about right now. He's talking about, in order to elevate the consciousness of the worker, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to activate what they consider to be the proletarian to overthrow the evil bourgeois dictator. They have to create these moments that inspire the proletarian to rise up. Does everyone get that? Yes, exactly. Like Tiananmen Square was iconic. Like, it's no accident that that building that got taken over at Columbia, that got decolonized at Columbia, like, Macklemore wrote a whole song about that. The kids that are doing that are heroes. They may have gotten arrested, they may face charges, but those kids are heroes on the left. They're going to be icons on the left. They're going to be the next leaders of the left. So they don't care if they got arrested.
That large layers of the masses begin to put to the test their own leadership. That's when it becomes evident that they have leaders that are not prepared to fight. And sharp turns can take place in consciousness. We also have to understand it's not just one single event that changes consciousness.
The conservatives can learn from this, to be honest.
It's a series of events
So can
over
the
a period of time.
Groypers.
And also, different layers of the working class draw conclusions at different tempos and speeds.
True.
For example, today, we have behind us what happened around 2015. We saw an international phenomenon. We had Corbyn, but we also had Sanders. We had Syriza in Greece, Podemos in Spain, the Mélenchon phenomenon in France. They all represented, in one way or another, a change in consciousness. And they were like the focal point for that consciousness to coalesce around. Hundreds of thousands joined the Labour Party because of Corbyn. Hundreds of thousands went to stadiums and big rallies in the United States to listen to Sanders.
And now they hate him because Bernie capitulated.
It's in the nature of these politicians, and this is not a judgment on their individual character. Some of them may be very nice people. But all of them revealed the limitations of reformism.
Aha.
I.e., they thought that you can improve things for working class people within the context of a capitalist system which is in deep crisis. So that explains why all those movements, in one way or another, were disappointed.
So the point he's trying to make here, and I love the flow of this so much better than the one we watched yesterday. The point he's trying to make here is that the political process is not going to give them the end result that they want. And this is really important because although they created a new party called the Revolutionary Communists of America, and it is a political party, the intent of the political party is not to run for political office. The intent of the political party is to give people something to join so they can get on the team. But it is not to run for political office because these people do not believe that their objectives are going to be achieved by getting onesies and twosie candidates elected to office. Now, don't get it twisted. If a politician comes around that they don't mind, they're not opposed to like voting for them. If they have opportunities, they'll do it. But by and large, they kind of think that politics is a waste of time. So what does that mean? That means, everyday therapist, very good, that revolution is their only option. That means what their argument is, and this is on an international basis, but we're going to focus on the United States, that their only option is to overthrow the United States government. That's it. And that is going to result in violent revolution at some point. Now, I don't believe the violence is actually going to start until the very end of the revolution. They're going to get all their chess pieces in place. They're going to get the king where they're like a move away from checkmate and basically the game is already over. And then there's going to be violence at the very end. There might be little things here and there, like we're going to see violence this summer. There's no doubt in my mind about that. We're probably going to see violence this fall too when people get back to college campuses and stuff like that. But like, make no mistake, their goal is to abolish the capitalist U.S. government as we currently know it. They want to abolish the United States Senate. They want to abolish the Supreme Court. They want to abolish the Electoral College. They want to abolish the Constitution. I think they're okay with keeping the House of Representatives around in theory, but not in its current form, not that you know of it. And we have them on video literally saying they want to raise the red flag of communism above the White House. So this is real. And that is the goal. Revolution is the only option. Let's see. I did see a question from someone. Jane, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I appreciate you asking. Would Antifa be more aligned with this group versus the queer group? No, Antifa are more aligned with queer Marxists than they are with this group. Now, I personally think the queer Marxists are going to co-opt this group at some point. I could be wrong about that. But like also, I do think Antifa would work with them on things that they could work with them on. But Antifa is definitely more inclined towards queer Marxism, anarcho-communism.
And the same process of, how do you say, gathering of hundreds of thousands was lost and dissipated. A lot of these people are no longer in the Labour Party. Syriza is in a state of collapse. The same with Podemos. Sanders is now just a mildly left, if you could say that, left Democrat.
They don't like Sanders anymore, see?
But you see, people draw conclusions from experience. Particularly the younger generation. It is because we have that behind us that the Are You a Communist campaign was so successful. I remember getting the reports. We went to this demonstration, met a bunch of young kids, and they'd say, "Are you socialist?" Well, I'm not a socialist. I'm a communist. And we had that repeatedly. Young people have drawn the conclusion that the socialists, a la Corbyn, a la Sanders, don't fight. They compromise. They want something more serious. And that shows you how an idea, which the bourgeoisie, with its massive resources in terms of media, the education system, etc., thought they had buried once and for all, and yet that idea keeps coming back. The reason for that is because the ideas of genuine communism are the only ones that can explain the crisis that we're in and what needs to be done. Now,
Hey, Mama Spark.
so
over
we
on
have
Rumble.
the big
See
events
ya.
that have an impact on consciousness, and they will be the events which will transform the small revolutionary communist parties into much bigger organizations. But in order for them to be able to play that role when the time comes, there's a long preparatory period of the work of building a sizable cadre organization that can become a point of reference when the masses begin to move. Therefore, what I'm saying is this: the creation of the future mass revolutionary parties will be a combination of the subjective and the objective elements. The educated cadres and the events in which to intervene with those cadres. Now, events are beyond our control. We cannot manufacture a crisis of capitalism. And we cannot manufacture a general strike. These are objective processes that unfold from the situation. But we do have control over the building of the cadres. Now that is the work that Lenin dedicated himself to from the 1890s until the Russian Revolution of 1917.
Yeah, this is actually a good point. I just want to make sure people understand this, because the reason I'm bringing this up, Leave My Rights Alone says, the paupers went to schools controlled by the Fabians, which means communism. So guys, there are people who call themselves like Fabian libertarians or whatever. They're not libertarians, they're communists. Anyone using the term Fabian is a fucking communist. And I don't care. It's kind of like with Has and this MAGA communism thing. Has is not MAGA anything. Has is a communist. Anyone calling themselves Fabian is a communist. That's just the way it goes. But they try to trick people by calling themselves something different.
You see, if you look back then, Lenin was a great theoretician. But at times he had a very small force around him, was in exile, working against the stream. He could not reach the masses. You see, we have to exclude the idea that the Revolutionary Party can win the masses in times of relative stability of the capitalist system. I.e., when capitalism can grant concessions for a lengthy period of time to the working class.
Okay. So what he's saying here is that they believe that they can only have like a significant amount of workers wake up and become activated against capitalism when capitalism is failing. And they believe, because, I mean, they're seeing the recruitment numbers for their party. They believe that now is their moment with like record inflation and all this stuff, and people are struggling financially. They believe that this is their moment to really go in hard to say, all of the problems that you're experiencing in your daily life are caused by capitalism. And it's not going to get solved. Like, inflation's not going to get solved. Your student loans aren't going to get paid. You aren't going to be able to have good health care. Like, you aren't going to be able to, you know, put gas in your car or like whatever. Like, they're trying to utilize this moment to recruit as many people as possible by really making sure and doubling down on the idea that Capitalism is causing all the problems in society because they believe that they can only recruit in times where people are struggling financially because it's very easy for them to direct the blame at capitalism. And again, they're recruiting massively right now. And so it's working, it's the correct strategy, but I want to make sure people understand that like when times are good and people have the money they need and like if it like back when Trump was president, and I'm not voting for Trump again. I'm not, but like life was pretty effing good when Trump was president. Like I made a bunch of money when Trump was president. I think a lot of people did quite well when Trump was president. Like you can't recruit to a communist revolution when times are good. The times need to get bad in order for them to be able to do it.
Well, in such times, reformism dominates the movement, as was the case in the latter part of the 19th century and the first decade of the 20th century. We also have to remember that even at the outbreak of revolution, reformist ideas dominate the movement. If you studied it, in February, the Bolsheviks were not the majority of the working class. It was the Mensheviks, the social revolutionaries, who had the majority. But you see, revolutionary events accelerate the process. As Ted used to refer to, sharp turns and sudden changes. He used to repeat that often. That is what we're preparing for. We already see that. We're in the middle.
Okay, here's a question from Mary. Do you think there are people in the Biden administration who agree with what the RCA stands for? Okay, I need to be careful how I answer this question. Are there people who currently work in the federal government that agree with what the Revolutionary Communists of America stand for? Yeah, a lot of them. A lot more people than you think. There are people in federal government. There are people in bureaucratic positions that can't be fired no matter what administration comes in. There are people in the military. The guy who set himself on fire when he was in his Air Force uniform outside the embassy, he was in the military. He agrees with these people. So are there people in the Biden administration who agree with these people? Yeah, 100%. However, these people hate the Democratic Party. They hate Joe Biden. They call them neoliberals. They do not like them. They do not agree with them. Calling the Democratic Party socialists is not accurate at all. Real socialists have very strong disagreement with that characterization. And so this is one of those things where I really think the conservative right does themselves a massive disservice every time they scream about the Democrats as being the socialists, because there are real socialists, there are real communists, and they have more power than people think. And every time you guys call the Democrats socialists, you are actually giving them more power because you're allowing them to operate in plain sight while everyone thinks the Democrats are what you're talking about. These people hate the Democrats. They view the Democrats as one of their biggest obstacles. These people hate the Democrats more than they hate the conservatives. They don't even think about the conservatives. That's like how not an issue the conservatives are. These people don't even care about them at all in any way. Well, so for these people, the term fascism means free market capitalism. So anytime you hear them call someone a fascist, they're literally just saying you want private property ownership. And we have them on video saying that. Let's see. Did I see any other questions? Are the Dems paying any attention to the communist groups, or are they just as clueless as the conservatives? Yeah, they don't pay attention either. Like, and by the way, conservatives don't pay attention to this. I'm the only person that's been screaming about this for literally months now. Conservatives pay no more attention to this than Democrats pay attention to this. They're all just fighting each other. They have no idea this is going on. I know you guys get off on saying that, and fine, like whatever, but it's not productive. You're not doing yourselves any favors.
Midst of that already now.
Why can't you just call yourselves nationalists? Why can't you just do that? Like, why can't you just, and I'm not saying like I understand like your guys' perspective, but why do you have to be as inflammatory as possible?
Now, the process began with the outbreak of the First World War. War eventually radicalizes. And if you see the events towards the end of the First World War, you see the beginnings of revolutionary movements. We had it in Russia. You also had similar movements in Italy. You had the German Revolution, 1918, the Hungarian 1919, etc. Now you see, big events in one country can trigger international revolution when the conditions are ripe. That was the role of the Russian Revolution. But there's other moments in history. May 68 was not just a French phenomenon. We have the Mexican 68. We have the Pakistan 68. Why in the same year? Or at least the same period? Because the system is global and the events are international. Because it's the crisis of the system as a whole that then produces similar events in individual countries. Now, at the base of the Comintern was the experience of the Bolshevik Party. Lenin often said to the communists of other countries, less applause and more study. Study our experience. Study how we achieved that party. You know, we know the history, the 1903 split, the period as working as a faction in the same party as the Mensheviks from 1906 to 1912. And then 1912, the final break. The discussions on how to apply the tactic of the United Front that the Bolsheviks developed. So there were plenty of lessons in the history of the Bolshevik Party for the soon-to-be-born communist parties to study. And it was this rich experience of the Bolshevik Party which would form the theoretical basis of the Third Communist International.
Hang on. Can we please not? I understand what you're saying. I don't want to have this conversation right now, okay? We can have this conversation at AFPAC, Taylor. I promise you. But we can't have it right now on YouTube, all right? Thank you. I appreciate it.
At least in the days of Lenin and Trotsky.
Thank you.
And this is very clear if you look at the debates that took place in those congresses, those first four congresses.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. Yeah. More than I'm willing to take right now.
That experience shows that theory was the fundamental bedrock upon which the organization was built. Now, as I said, it's the objective situation that permits small revolutionary forces to rapidly transform into mass revolutionary parties. But without revolutionary theory, that potential cannot be realized. Look at what happened in Russia after February 1917. The Bolsheviks inside Russia were succumbing to the pressures of the moment. They were leaning towards support for the provisional government. There were plenty of practicos involved in that. It took the theoretician, Lenin, to guide the party in the correct direction. Without the theoretician Lenin, there would not have been the Russian Revolution. And without the educated cadres in the ranks of the party, he would not have had the party with which to apply that theory. When the First World War broke out, we find Lenin studying Hegel.
Hegel,
going on.
bingo, drink.
Why is he reading Hegel?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Well, it was the dialectician Lenin who was capable of understanding in February what the policy of the party should be.
Dialectical materialism.
He put February in the context of the process. And he could foresee how things would develop and change.
Yeah, this is pretty typical.
How
of
the same working
these types of
class,
presentations,
which was supporting the Mensheviks and social revolutionaries, would learn from the experience, would draw conclusions, and consciousness would change. In that situation, you have to be able to resist all the pressures of the mass movement.
Taylor, if you want the really entertaining stuff, this guy is not one of the more entertaining communists that we've watched, but we need the information in the presentation, which is why we're watching it. But what I will tell you, come back for one of the queer Marxist presentations that we do sometime. Come back for like abolish the family stuff. Come back for like the really dystopian shit. And you will see a different type of commie speaker. And that they'll be much more entertaining, I promise you. But these guys, the Bolsheviks, do tend to be rather dry. Would tenants' rights groups be in the same category as the RCA? Yes. Very good, Mary. Very good. Yeah, most tenants' rights groups are run by socialists. In fact, there are a ton of socialists that are like that were actually at the socialism conference that I went undercover at that were specifically focused on tenants' rights. The squatters' rights things, that all comes from socialists because they don't believe in private property ownership, and so they believe that they're the ones pushing squatters' laws essentially. Let's see. Oh, God. You're about to get to a point that I'm not strong at. Forgive my ignorance, Dr. K. Can you explain dialectic? Rottweiler, can you please explain dialectic? I always suck at explaining this one, but Rottweiler or someone else in the chat will explain it, and I promise I will display it on the screen. This is one of the areas where I have not gotten good at explaining this. Rottweiler, can you please explain dialectic to me? Listen, I'm good at explaining a lot of things, right? This is just something that I don't actually have to explain that often. We'll wait for Rottweiler to pipe in. Jordan Peterson discussed Marx and Satanism in a recent video. Oh, I'm sure that was just outlandish and ridiculous. All right, let's keep going.
Because if you don't, when the masses do reach the revolutionary conclusions, you will not be the revolutionary party that can lead the class. That's why we dedicate so much importance to theory. Without it, these big mistakes can be made. Now, Lenin spent a lot of time in the heat of revolution writing books. You know, we've been criticized by people because we produce a lot of books. We're book readers, bookworms.
No, that's true. They make their money selling
I've even
books.
heard us called as Alan and Ted were referred to as mere theoreticians.
All right. Rottweiler has come through for us, as I knew he would. Dialectic is basically the theoretical background behind the idea. Dialectical materialism is part of the dialectic of Marxism. Postmodernist dialectic is part of queer Marxism, for example. So, like the theoretical background behind what they're talking about. So, if we were to use this in a proper sentence, James Lindsay focuses on the dialect. I focus on the real world. Is that correct? And remember, guys, we're when we ask for definitions of things, we're asking how would the left describe this thing, which may not be how the right or normal people would describe that thing. We're asking specifically, how does the left look at this term and what is their perspective on it? So there could be different perspectives, different definitions, stuff like that. Okay, so that is correct. So James Lindsay focuses on the dialectic, the theoretical background. I focus on the real world. Thank you, Rottweiler. Oh, yeah, I could ask the AI girlfriend. Shoot, that was a miss. But Rottweiler explains it so well. Why would I? And you got to use the best resources you have. Well, I mean, I'm not suggesting the dialectic isn't important. What I'm saying is that, like, listen, it's important to understand this problem from all angles. My contention, though, is that if you want to be able to fight back against what the left is doing in the real world today, you have to know what the left is doing in the real world. And sometimes things that were written, 100, 150 years ago by dead philosophers, they don't necessarily translate to what is actually going on in the real world today. That's my opinion on it.
Well, they can live in that world. We live in another one. Lenin wrote the April Theses in April 1917. He wrote Imperialism in 1916, published in 1917. He wrote State and Revolution in August, September 1917. On the eve of revolution, after the revolution, in the middle of the Civil War, he wrote The Renegade Kautsky. He wrote many texts on the national question in 1914, 1916, 1917, in 1920. He kept coming back to this important question. In April and May of 1920, he wrote Left-Wing Communism, an Infantile Disorder.
Left-wing communism.
This was for the Second Congress of the Comintern. Lenin paid a lot of attention to theory right in the middle of major historical events. Because he understood how important it was to educate.
Hang on. I know this is off topic. Matt Walsh is tweeting info about the Daily Wire having more info on the Nashville trans shooter manifesto. I know you had that info too. I'll post. So does Human Centipede, I'm looking at you. Does Matt Walsh have the same thing I have? Or does Matt Walsh have something different than what I have? Because Matt Walsh could conceivably have more information on the Nashville shooter manifesto. I don't think he has the same information that we have. Okay, I see the tweet. I don't think... Okay, he has different pages of the manifesto. Okay, so what we have is the origin that inspired that particular ideology within the anarchist literature. That's what we have. Matt Walsh doesn't even know this shit exists, and no one should tell him. That's why I'm not saying the title of the thing, because I don't want other people to find this until I get around to it. So what we have is like, we have the philosophy, we have the dialectic that inspired the Nashville shooter, but it's not going to come from like the philosophy, like the stuff that James Lindsay does. It's going to come from the queer anarcho-communist subculture stuff that we've been looking into. Well, they should just release the whole fucking thing. What are they waiting for? This is so stupid. I've looked through it. I just haven't had time to sit down and actually read the whole thing, but it is on the list. I promise I'm going to get to it tomorrow. And I know it's been more time sensitive than that. I've just had other stuff to do, okay? I'm sorry. I can't do everything all at once.
And guide the cadres of the International. You see, one of the problems the Comintern faced in its early days,
but it's probably better we have the additional pages
was
now.
that whereas the Bolsheviks had drawn lessons from experience, such as, for example, the need to apply the United Front tactic in an intelligent manner, or the need to work even in the most reactionary trade unions, or to do parliamentary work. It's quite funny, actually. When Fiona announced that she was standing, I saw one stupid comment on one post. Ha, ha, ha. The Revolutionary Communist Party standing in elections. Ha, what revolutionaries. And I thought, Jesus Christ. Over 100 years since Lenin wrote all his texts, we still have such idiots.
True.
But they are caricatures of caricatures. Because there were some important figures in that period leading mass parties who were ultra-left. We had people like Bordiga, who was to become the leader of the Italian Communist Party. We had one individual, a Dutch guy called Herman Gorta. He tried to reply to Lenin. He replied to his left-wing communism in an open letter to Comrade Lenin. Basically, he was saying we shouldn't participate in the elections. We should boycott parliament. We should split the trade unions. This became so bad that amongst the German communists, there were people who actually believed that we should have, they should have a rule that members of the party should not join trade unions. In fact, the split in the German communists was over the 21 points. The famous 21 points included the need to work in the trade unions. And so you had this problem of ultra-leftism and sectarianism. This phenomenon has existed ever since those days, in different forms, some more extreme than others. Now you see, where did this ultra-leftism come from? Well, if you look at the German SPD, they had gone through a period of decades of significant economic growth. They had managed to develop as a mass force, but the impact of the development of capitalism on the consciousness of the leaders of the Social Democrats was to push them towards the idea that capitalism could now be reformed. They then went on to betray the revolution at the key moment. And that's why you had the other phenomenon, the opposite of opportunism, you could say, which is ultra-leftism. It was a reaction against that opportunism. Now, Lenin considered that a healthy reaction, but nonetheless, he defined it an infantile disorder. You know, an infantile disorder is something you grow out of. But you know, in psychology, there are such phenomena which are due to the fact that certain individuals were not allowed to mature in psychology. They seem to be blocked at a certain phase of development. And they have an element of the child in them, in their thinking. It creates some rather weird and wonderful people. And in politics, this is a similar phenomenon. Some of these communists remained in the infantile stage of the movement, incapable of understanding what was really necessary. That explains why Lenin wrote Left-Wing Communism. He dedicated a lot of time to editing it personally and making sure that it was ready and printed by the time of the Second Congress. So that every delegate had a copy in front of him when he sat down at the Congress. That was how important Lenin considered this question. That's why we've republished the book. And we're insisting that all comrades read it and study it. Now, in the first 4 congresses of the Comintern, that is the founding Congress in 1919, then the second in 1920, the third in 1921, and the fourth in 1922, Lenin and Trotsky played a leading role in attempting to educate these parties. We could say that in some of these congresses, they would enter the Congress probably in a minority position on several questions. They didn't use organizational measures. They used the art of debate. They intervened and explained patiently to educate the ranks of the International and to win over.
Hang on. Would I ever talk to Nick about ideology? Sure. Why not? But Nick has to want to talk to me, and I don't know that he does. And so, I mean, maybe, if Nick ever wants to have I'll talk to Nick about pretty much anything. Now, I'm not going to talk to Nick about something that's going to get my YouTube channel banned. But I would have a conversation with Nick. Sure, fine, whatever. I find Nick to be fascinating. I think he's fascinating. I think he's funny. I think that he and I have some strong agreements. I think he and I also have some strong disagreements, but I don't know. I kind of feel like he and I also have kind of like an understanding, like a weird understanding, even though we've never really talked, but like we have a weird understanding. I don't know. Anyway.
The ranks. Now, I haven't got time to go into all the details of the debates. That's not my purpose here. But the first Congress, which was rather a small event, was basically announcing the international. It exists. We're here. They published a manifesto, and they invited all the healthy revolutionary forces around the world to join them.
Oh yeah, hang on. If I'm gonna talk to Nick, he has to grow the mustache. I want the porn stash back.
In the Second International, we see how it's developing, and the leadership is elaborating in depth a number of questions. You see the internal debates. Some of the left communists were talking about the imminent collapse of capitalism. It was Lenin who warned them that although the system was in crisis, the system could recover and could avoid revolution. This depended on the Revolutionary Party. The subjective element played a key role. But they discussed questions such as the national and colonial questions. To be honest, it's the communists that developed a genuine revolutionary policy on this. You know, in the Second International, you had theoreticians, so-called theoreticians, who raised the idea that because capitalism was still going through a progressive stage, then the colonization of the world was a progressive role of capitalism in raising these people to a higher level.
Huh. Interesting.
It was the Communist International that developed a revolutionary position. And they discussed questions such as the role of the communist parties in these countries, the question of the nature of the bourgeoisie, what tactics they should adopt. These were discussed. They also discussed at the second, in the build-up to the Second Congress, the need to clarify who were the genuine revolutionary communists and the opportunist elements that had managed to get into the international. I just want to quote Trotsky on this. He talks about the ranks of the Communist International need to be made accessible only to those collective bodies which are permeated with a genuine spirit of proletarian revolt against bourgeois rule.
There it is.
He talks about there is no room left not only for turncoats and traitors, but also for spineless skeptics.
Yeah, so these people like both Lenin and Trotsky. They do not like Stalin. Basically, these people think that if Stalin hadn't come along, then the Soviet Union would have like worked out and real communism would have been great and everything was fine until Stalin fucked everything up. But basically, like, so my understanding, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a historian in this, but I picked up enough from like the Leninists to like, I think I understand this. So they hold up the Russian Revolution as like the greatest event in the history of mankind. That was Lenin. And then Trotsky was like trying to like continue and again, I don't know if I'm right about this, continue like Lenin's legacy, but he was running, he was basically, Trotsky was like arguing with, like Stalin came in after like the revolution, and Stalin started to fuck everything up. And then Trotsky started saying, Stalin, you're fucking everything up. And here is what actually should have happened. Am I right about that? I think that's basically what happened. And then Stalin had Trotsky assassinated because Trotsky was being a pain in his ass. Because what happened was, like, when Stalin came in, they had this kind of like inner party thing where they weren't the bourgeois, but they were called the bureaucrats. We learned this yesterday. Exactly. Stalinism lifted up the bureaucrats, so they were effectively the bourgeois again. And so they had all the privileges and all this stuff. And the bureaucrats were basically like the new capitalists. And Trotsky was like, what the fuck, Stalin? Like, this is not what we talked about. And then he was assassinated. So Lenin and Trotsky are on the same team. Stalin is bad in these people's eyes. And Stalin is the reason that they say real communism has never been tried, because they think that Stalin deviated from the plan. Yes, Stalin made a hierarchy. Exactly. Hierarchies
eternally
are bad.
Vacillating elements, sowers of panic and of ideological confusion. He says this cannot be attained without a constant and stubborn purging from our ranks of false ideas.
Ooh, a sudden purging of our ranks of false ideas. Are there any movies about the Russian Revolution? Well, so if you want to watch the real movie about the Russian Revolution, watch the Battleship Potemkin. And like, if you can sit through the Battleship, I had to watch the Battleship Potemkin in college. Like, the Battleship Potemkin is like basically the uprising of the people, and the Battleship Potemkin is actually an interesting movie because there are no individuals in that movie, because the crowd, the collective, is the main character, and it's about basically this mob of people like rises up and takes over the Battleship Potemkin. But like, what's interesting about it is it's playing out like the Russian Revolution with the proletarian rising up and taking over and stuff like that. Yeah, it's an awful movie. Like, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I would not want to sit through that movie again. But that is a movie celebrating the glory of the Russian Revolution. They don't really talk about Mao, Mary, to be honest. And if you guys know any other movies that are, well, okay, so yeah, so this is right. So the Battleship Potemkin was before it. You're right. Now I'm remembering. It's all coming back. So the Battleship Potemkin, the movie, came out before the Russian Revolution, because the Russian Revolution was in what, 1917? So it preceded it. It was trying to, so then that was a movie that was trying to elicit the masses to rise up then. That's funny. I forgot about that.
False methods of action and their bearers. Trotsky wrote many articles and gave many speeches
Red Dawn.
in the early days of the Comintern. Now, it was at the Second Congress that they discussed the 21 conditions. And what I just quoted from Trotsky was written before the Congress. Now, why were these conditions elaborated and voted on? I will go into the details of each party later on, but a number of parties had come over to the International from the Second International.
So another point I want to make about this is, so he's talking about this Congress, that Congress, this international, that international. So basically, like, what he's talking about are meetings, are conferences, are events where people got together just like they're getting together in Italy right now, and they're talking about their ideas, and they're teaching each other their ideas, and they're doing presentations exactly like this. And so what I want people to hear about this is like, sometimes people think, well, let's take AFPAC, for example. Let's take AFPAC as an event. Just for argument's sake. AFPAC is going to be a conference where like we go into a ballroom somewhere and we listen to some speeches and people talk about some stuff and there's some networking and then everyone goes home. And people kind of look at stuff like this and they're like, okay, that's just one event. Like, what are you really doing with that? Like, what impact does that really have? Well, think about it this way. The communists refer to these meetings all the time. This happened at the first Congress. This happened at the second Congress. And these are historical events for them. And so what I want people to hear about this is like, you don't need to have 1 million people in the room in order to create a historically significant event. You don't even need to have you don't even need to have an event the size of a Trump rally to create a historically significant event. You just have to have the right people in the room at the right time and be like focused in on ideas that are, for lack of a better term, like revolutionary. And so this is why it's kind of like this idea that like a small group of dedicated people can change the world. That's actually real. You don't need tens of thousands of people in order to do something that, with the benefit of hindsight, will end up being historically significant. You just need to get the right people in the room at the right time. I'm not necessarily suggesting that AFPAC is going to do that. I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But it's one of those things where I think people dismiss this idea of like, these types of events, these types of meetings is just like another thing that they have to go to. And maybe there's some networking and there's some drinking and stuff like that. But if you get the right people in the room, you can create events that can very literally change the course of history and be much more broadly impactful. This is what the WEF does. This is what the World Economic Forum is. It's a bunch of rich people all getting together in the room at the same time and deciding how they want the world to be run. But it doesn't just have to be them. It can be like the communists have done this too. If the communists can do this, then anyone can do this. So why can't we do it? Why can't other groups that are against this stuff do it?
And they brought with them their right wings. Lenin and Trotsky understood the need to purge the right wing from the International. I'm not going to list all the conditions. There's no time for that. But condition number 2 refers to methodically remove reformists and centrists.
That's funny. No centrist.
This actually created a polemic inside the parties, which I'll explain later. But there's a number of conditions which were necessary to set down a line of demarcation between revolutionary communists and centrist reformists, etc.
That's what they're doing now with this, the purge of the centrists and the reformists.
They're available. You can find them and you can read them and study them. You could have a whole branch meeting just on 3 sheets of paper.
And I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say something controversial. I kind of agree with them on this point. And I agree with them more now on this point than I probably would have 10 years ago, because I think that the only thing that people even respond to in our world today is going to be something at the extremes. And this is why I like Nick, because Nick is not kowtowing to any of this bullshit. And again, I may not agree with him on everything. I don't agree with him on everything. But what I like about Nick and the Groypers and the America First movement is that they are extremists. They are. I mean, and there's something that type of attitude is necessary sometimes. And I think that it's one of those things that, listen, the Republican Party isn't going to change anything. The Republican Party isn't going to change anything. The Republican Party isn't going to conserve anything. Like, they're not going to accomplish anything. The Democratic Party is not going to change anything. The Democratic Party isn't like, the Democratic Party is basically like, Democrats and Republicans are the same. They're two sides of the same coin. The groups that are going to end up changing things in the landscape that we're in are the extreme radical revolutionary left, because they're dragging the Democrats along with them. And now the Democrats are not as left as them, but the radical revolutionary left is trying to drag everyone on the left over to where they are, and they're being successful in some cases, and they're using them as useful idiots. There is no right-wing answer to that that's effective at all, except for Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. And he might not be as broadly successful just yet at dragging the conservative right where he wants them to go, but he can be eventually. And I think we've already seen that, it's funny, like, he was retweeting The Blaze the other day, where, like, The Blaze is now using talking points that Nick was using years ago. Like, Charlie Kirk has been pulled farther right because of Nick. Like, conservative media is getting pulled farther right because Nick and the Groypers are out there being relentless about it. And so I don't have to agree with every single thing that Nick says to understand the necessity of someone like Nick in an environment where the conservative right is completely fucking feckless and lazy and useless, and they're going to just cause problems and be obstacles against actually being productive on the left until they get their shit together, and he is one of the people that can drive it in that direction. How do I know Nick isn't a Fed? I mean, I guess I don't, but I mean, I don't know. Like, people call me a Fed all the time. Like, so, and I know I'm not a Fed. If I'm a Fed, then why the fuck did I get audited for January 6th? So, I mean, where the fuck is my handler? Like, I don't know. Maybe he is, maybe he is. I tend to doubt it, but like, he could be. But I tend to doubt it. But it doesn't really even matter to me if he is or is not, to be honest, because he is still, right now, Nick is causing problems for people that I don't like. And so, as long as Nick is causing problems for people that I don't like, then sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And sometimes there are weird bedfellows that happen. But I don't think he's a Fed.
We discussed the question of the trade unions. This was also discussed at the third Congress.
Yeah, the enemy of my enemy is my friend type thing.
The question of how to work in the unions was raised. The question of factory committees, rank and file bodies, and the radicalization inside the unions. At the third Congress, they also discussed the question of, there's a thesis that's called Methods and Forms of Work Among Communist Party Women. It actually starts off with the first paragraph saying all the communist parties of the West and the East need to increase work amongst the female proletariat. It raised the idea of organizing special apparatuses inside the party and establishing special methods of approaching women.
They're proactively recruiting women.
They insisted, of course, that the emancipation of women could only finally be achieved in the course of the transformation of society.
So this is part of where, and this is where queer Marxists is kind of take off what he's talking about right now. So with socialists, they don't treat women any differently than they treat men, which I know might sound weird to people, but remember, the idea is that they want to abolish all inequities between everyone. They don't want hierarchies, and they believe that capitalism created the gender binary, which is men and women. It put men in the workplace where they had all the power and all the money, and women in the home doing the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of proletarian workers. That is the nuclear family. That is why the nuclear family is the means of reproduction of capitalism. If you have any questions about what I just said, I know I said it very quickly, ask in the chat, and I'm happy to explain and elaborate. But my point is that socialists do not treat men and women differently. Like women are responsible for doing like the same type of work men is, and it's the same thing is socialists also don't treat people of different skin colors differently. Like people think that the left is like racist against white people. Well, no, they're not. They don't treat white people any differently than they treat black people or Native Americans or or Asians or any other thing, because everyone is a comrade. If you are a comrade, you are a member of the party. You have no individual identity, which is ironic when you think about it in terms of like identity politics and them using identity politics, but it's just a tactic. They know what they need to do to divide people. They know what they need to do to rile people up and to get people on their team, and they're willing to do it. But that doesn't mean in practice, when you're in these organizations, that they treat men and women differently, or white people and black people differently, or gay and queer people differently than straight people. They really don't. Everyone is on the same level because they don't believe in hierarchies.
Again, worth reading. It has lessons for today. We also published a whole book on women in the Russian Revolution, which covers a lot of the of that period. The Third Congress also discussed the question of the youth of the party.
Oh.
It highlighted the greater radicalization of the youth in that period, and the need to organize amongst the youth, to educate the youth. And also to have a youth, kind of a youth international of the international. In some countries, in fact, the youth sections of social democratic and socialist parties passed en masse to the international. In some countries where only a section of the party joined the Comintern, the youth totally joined. It showed you the greater degree of radicalization amongst the youth. The Comintern Congresses were really a school of communism. They analyzed the ups and downs of the movement. For instance, the discussion on the relationship of the economic cycle to the class struggle. You know, combating this simplistic approach that crisis always means class struggle and recovery means social peace. They explain from a study of the history of the movement but that is not always the case. Trotsky, for instance, explains that it depends on the context. If you've had a period of severe recession, deep slump, which can paralyze the working class in certain moments, when millions of workers are losing their jobs, how do you strike against the boss when he's sacking you. You can occupy the factory. But in general, there are periods we've seen where a deep slump can, in the first instance, actually has the opposite to what some people think. Instead of pushing the class struggle forward, it works like a massive brake. And Trotsky pointed out that it's when the recovery starts after such a period that you can have an outburst of strikes and class struggle. You know, when in a factory, they've gone through a period of job cuts, job cuts, job cuts. And then the boss takes on 10, 20 workers. The workers get a sense that they're more powerful now. Now's the time to strike. And so you have this seemingly paradoxical situation of an economic recovery and an outburst of class struggle. Now, this is just a little example of their attempt to educate the ranks of the International.
Hang on. So they've occupied schools. How long before they actually try to occupy a large business building? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it happened this summer, if I'm honest about it. They tried to occupy the Ellipse the other day at the White House. They tried to set up an encampment at the fucking White House. But here's the thing, though, with businesses, the value that businesses have to the far left is they use businesses in terms of the unions to recruit people to the far left. So I don't think it's actually as important to them to occupy a big corporate building. Although, yeah, well, actually, no, they already did. You're right, Bot. They occupied Google. They occupied the CEO, the executive suite at Google like a couple months ago. It wouldn't surprise me if they did stuff like this. If they did a whole Occupy thing at, like, you know, Facebook or Amazon or like one of the Amazon buildings or something like that, would not surprise me at all. But the biggest value that businesses have is in terms of their ability to recruit people, not just through the unions, but also through like employee resource groups, different like connections that they make there. And so I suspect that that's probably where they're going to focus more on, because people aren't going to be looking for that. But it wouldn't surprise me if we saw a takeover of like one of the really lefty businesses. But I guess we'll see. But at Google, they fired all the people that did it, like immediately.
Now, I can remember when I read this by Trotsky, I remember thinking, yeah, I know that. Because I can remember my dad saying, they always want to go on strike when the boss is cutting back. We should hit the boss when he has orders on the books and he has to deliver the goods. So when I read Trotsky, I thought, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of workers actually live this in their lives, and they live this as an experience. And Trotsky was educating the parties in this kind of thinking. You see, dialectics involves contradiction.
Aha.
And if you understand dialectics, you can also understand such ideas. And you can understand where things are going, even though they may apparently seem to be going somewhere else. But you can see the process as a whole. Now, I strongly suggest, when you have time, I know there's a lot of reading to do, that book by Trotsky, the first 5 years of the Comintern, it is rich in theory. And for example, there's a text there from a speech by Trotsky in July 1921 called A School of Revolutionary Strategy. And I will read 2 quotes. Young comrades with little experience in such questions should apply themselves to a study of historical works in order to master the factual material pertaining to the history of different countries and peoples, particularly and especially their economic history. Only then is it possible to attain a more concrete and clearer conception of the inner mechanics of society. This mechanics must be clearly understood in order to apply Marxism correctly to tactics, i.e., to the class struggle in practice. You see what importance he gives to theory, to study, to reading, in order to be able to act correctly in the class struggle. Talking about the young communist parties, which were inexperienced, this was actually the tragedy of the whole period, in fact. He says, it would be a mistake to expect of these young and just risen communist parties that they immediately master the art of revolutionary strategy. And he says, no, last year's tactical experience testifies all too clearly to the contrary. And the Third Congress came to grips with this question. Anyway, read the book. I know it's a big one, but, you know. Again, in an article called Flood Tide, where he discusses things like the economic cycle and the class struggle.
Oh, I'm falling asleep. This one's rough. We're going to get through it.
He discusses the bourgeois maneuvers.
It's important. This is what we train for.
He discusses the question of ultra-leftism.
Bourgeois maneuvers.
He makes one important comment. He says this: had there been in Germany in 1918 and 19 a communist party comparable in strength to that which existed in March 1921, it is quite probable that the proletariat would have assumed power as early as January or March 1919. But there was no such party. The proletariat suffered defeat. Out of the experience of this defeat, the Communist Party grew up. Once arisen, if it tried in 1921 to act in the manner of the Communist Party, if it tried in 1921 to act in the manner that the Communist Party should have acted in 1919, it would have been battered to pieces. This is exactly what the last World Congress made clear. So you had living revolutions taking place.
Hang on.
And the Comintern in its congresses was discussing
You guys want to do a
this.
break? Hang on. Break. Everyone's falling asleep. Hang on. We need a break. Hang on. You're going to love this. It's going to be great. Hang on. It's going to be a surprise.
No matter how you're born, we each have the style. I'll tell you in a while exactly what I like.
Ariana and Renee, they both are born girls. They go into their changing rooms. Ariana loves twirls. That's not for Renee. Pink will not do. All girls don't wear dresses, they wear pants too. Has Renee lost her mind? What's running through her head? Ariana can fix this, no is what she said.
When you put it on, you do a little groove. You know you've gotta move. That's how you know you've got it right. This is me, who I am. See me in full color, see like no other. Originality. No matter how you're born, we each have the style. I'll tell you in a while exactly what I like.
Bryce and Jason, they both are born boys. They go into their changing rooms. Bryce jumps out with joy. Jason has a different idea. The sweater is where it's at. Bryce has to fix this. Here, try this or that. Wait just 1 second. Don't tell him how to dress. Ariana knows this. Only Jason can express.
This is me, who I am. See me in full color, me like no other. Originality. No matter how you're born, we each have the style. I'll tell you in a while exactly what I like.
Darla and Charles, one girl and one boy. They go into their changing rooms. Charles is feeling coy. Others are thrilled with the look, but Charles is quite unhappy. Let's try this again. Yeah, this is snappy. Some are confused. They just don't understand. Charles, now Charlotte is certain. Ariana's her biggest fan. Some might keep their distance, but others will come around. Come on over, Darla. Show us what you found. Darla had something on, but is not quite convinced. She wants to try again, yet she still gives a wince. Nope, not right either. Why can't she decide? Sometimes it takes time, only she can find her stride. Darla presents an outfit. The new name is Darren. Now everything feels right. The person within he's sharing.
When you put it on, you do a little groove. You know you've gotta move. That's how you know you've got it right. This is me, who I am. See me in full color, me like no other. Originality.
Here we have Skylar, born a boy or girl. Not interested in the girl look. Won't give the boy look a whirl. Skylar wants a new path, and it isn't one of those. This is a unique look from Skylar's head to toe.
When you put it on, you do a little groove. You know you've gotta move. That's how you know you've got it right. This is me, who I am. See me in full colors, me like no other. Original is me, who I am. See me in full color, it's me like no other. Originality.
All right. Now that everyone is awake, here's what I'm thinking. Okay. I think we're getting some good information from that presentation, but to be honest, it's not anything that I didn't already kind of know. And it's so dry, and I'm falling asleep And I think most of the chat is falling asleep. And so I'm not saying this wasn't a valuable exercise. This is just one of those days where it was a very dry presentation and I don't want to do anymore. And probably one of the reasons I don't want to do anymore is that I have 2 hours to do other stuff before I come back for the stream with Big Tech later. Okay? And so I think we're going to call it there. I think we got some good nuggets out of it, like nothing really outlandish. Again, this wasn't a queer Marxist presentation. This wasn't like the craziest shit we've ever seen. This is more like kind of just confirming let's just bag it. Do you want to do the boner song? You want to do the boner song? Let's do the boner song. We'll do the boner song as like an outro, okay? But I do think I'm going to be coming back in 2 hours and we're going to be streaming The Century of the Self with Big Tech. Hang on. Boner song. Let's find it. If you haven't seen the boner song, this is your lucky day. Oh, hang on. Amaze. Oh, How the Boner Grows. Okay, that's what it's called. Hang on. All right. So I think that's what we're going to do, guys. Congratulations to people who made it this far. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. as well. We're interviewing Mike Termont tomorrow, so that should be pretty great. And let's do the boner song as our outro for today.
Well, I need to see what my life is about. As Martin Flounder figures it out. It sure feels funny to know I'm not alone, right on the money. He stands up on his own. Since I was little, he's always been my friend, but now my middle can beat me around the bend. Oh no, 'cause that's how the boner grows. That's how the boner grows. Tell me I'm not alone. Out in the sand we make impressions where we're at, but come in handy if you need to change a flag. Oh, my crazy compass is way out of control, and my equator grows another pole. Oh, that's how the boner grows. That's how the boner grows. It's not really about. They say it's normal. Each guy gets his own, so we've erected all these monuments in stone. That's how the boner grows. That's how the boner grows. That's how the boner grows. That's how the boner grows.